Hello, and welcome to this webinar on measuring success in secondary learning. My name is Beth, and I will be your host. Today, we will introduce you to Edmentum's ExactPath. Time is precious in secondary education, and with ExactPath, educators can assess with our adaptive diagnostic, instruct with targeted instruction, reassess with a second or third administration window, analyze progress, and celebrate growth, all in one. One platform to assess, teach, and monitor. First, the diagnostic results create individualized learning paths. Second, it allows students an opportunity for practice to increase standards mastery and automatically scaffold if needed. It provides digital resources for teacher-directed assignments, and it has a built-in reward system for teachers and students to track growth and accelerate their learning. Secondary education is a bit of a complicated space, academically speaking. High school teachers are bound to a scope and sequence, and rightly so, are very focused on having their students achieve mastery of their respective course to attain credit. Administrators and counselors are also focused on graduation rates, or even maybe what comes after graduation. But a large percentage of the student population is still, again, simply focusing just on academics, is still trying to master elementary academic skills. As an example, let's take junior English. There may be students in this class that need foundational support in comprehension. This is going to be quite a challenge if they are missing fundamental skills to absorb the required reading of their course. Building blocks are essential for students, and if we simply ignore those, either the student is not actually earning the credit, or they are circling and getting frustrated. Maybe they are being pulled for resource or EL time when still expected to know what went on in that junior English class that they missed. Students rarely feel successful in either class. We need our students to be present during class time and have the ability to actively learn. And at the same time, differentiate effectively and efficiently. This also includes our high flyers, who are very curious learners and move at a much quicker pace. Edmentum's ExactPath believes that every student should have the opportunity to practice skills not yet mastered. Secondary education is also sometimes viewed with a very tight belt schedule. We will talk about that more in our third webinar next week, but how can we think of providing time for students to work on necessary skills and at the same time be attentive and present for their classes? When do they have time in their schedule to either remediate and/or spring forward? Let's think about how to get creative on providing time for students in such a program without missing class time. Think about it. How do you use your study hall? Homework. Many schools have implemented an intervention block or a targeted learning time, whatever name they might want to give it. And these are great opportunities for each student to work on identified skills within ExactPath. We must remember that giving students the opportunity to take ownership of their learning is going to create motivation, which in turn accelerates learning. This is a time for students to firm up prior knowledge, prepare for the road ahead, and build a healthy emotional foundation. Let's take a scenario. Mr. Brewer, a high school principal, wants to assess all students to understand who needs intervention in order to achieve graduation. If he could know each student's starting point, it would help set growth goals and provide resources to support our students. If we think about a recipe for this, let's think about steps. Step 1, assess all students to pinpoint where they are ready to learn. Step 2, analyze ExactPath's quickly accessible reports to understand not only students who need to remediate skills, but also for those to continue on their accelerated path. Step 3, with the individualized paths, teachers can quickly assign individual or targeted group instruction. And then in step 4, with the diagnostic, teachers can reassess to inform ongoing instructional needs and celebrate that academic growth. It's a very simple equation if we look at the assessment big picture. ExactPath Diagnostic combines accuracy and efficiency to accelerate growth. It is designed to help personalize instruction. For students in grades 2 through 12, the full diagnostic with math, language, and reading can take approximately 45 to 60 minutes, with approximately 45 questions. That may alter a bit depending on how the student is performing in the assessment. Adaptive assessments are all about tailoring question delivery to identify each student's ability level, but behind that is a fairly complicated algorithm. This visual is simplified, but it's what you would see on a student summary report in an ExactPath report. It's this assessment experience that we call it. An assessment will begin by giving students a question slightly below their current grade level, as designated by the system. After the first administration, the second administration would begin at the prior estimate of ability. Our sophisticated analysis and technology goes deep. The testing algorithm looks at every answer a learner has given up to that point and then identifies an item that matches what the learner can handle. As questions are answered correctly, students receive more difficult questions. And as questions are answered incorrectly, students receive a more appropriate question at a lower grade level. The assessment enforces coverage of all domains, so students receive an accurate assessment of their learning level across each subject domain. When all domains have been accurately assessed, the assessment will end, and that could be at different points for different learners. We are going to go live into a demo ExactPath account, and we're going to be able to see how to locate students' diagnostic data as a class, right, from a teacher perspective with their class data or individual reports. Then, within the same platform, it will take them to the auto-generated learning paths to monitor student progress as they master one skill at a time. We will also be taking a tour of a demo account of a student to understand the look and feel of an ExactPath account for a 6th through 12th grade student. So here we are in ExactPath as an educator. We have math, reading, language arts. I wanted to show you what does it look like to look at our data from a diagnostic, let's say we're on testing window 2. I can sort between classes, and now I have my class average at the top from test window 1 to test window 2. At the bottom, I have my individual data per student. Let's stay here for just a second. During administration 1, the average scale score of my students in math was 1104. The second time, the average was 1253. We made growth of 149 scale score points. The first step to understanding scale scores is to learn how they differ from a raw score. Raw scores represent the number of questions you answer correctly. For example, if you had a test that had 80 questions, that you received 80 questions correct out of 100, that would equate to an 80%. That is a raw score. A scale score is a raw score that has been adjusted and converted to a standardized scale. If your raw score is 80, that score is adjusted and converted into a scale score. These scores can be converted linearly or non-linearly. ExactPath has reference documents to understand scale scores, scale growth guidance, and how it equates to national percentile rankings. So as an example, just to show you some of the documentation that we have, we can see the percentiles and what scale score that equates to and the grade level equivalency. So we are able to see, if you wanted to understand the scale scores a little bit more and the national percentile rankings, we have the documentation to make that understandable. So again, here is our class average, the number of students, the average scale score, and the standard deviation. I'm now going to scroll down to my class. I'm going to explain this section a little bit in detail. I have my students, the grade level they're in, the scale score they earned from this assessment, the growth that happened from Test 1 administration to Test 2 administration. What does that scale score equate to in the national percentile ranking? And here we see the domains that were tested. This is math. Here are the domains, and within each domain, there are particular skills that were assessed to the students. Based upon how they did on the assessment, a learning path entry grade, what we call an LPEG for short, is created. What that means, the learning path entry grade level, because this data creates an individualized learning path, we must remember that not every skill is actually needed. Sometimes there might be a skill that we need in algebra and expressions at the 8th grade level, but we don't necessarily need all of 8th grade math. So what it does is it specifically picks out the skills within each domain, and it just tells the teacher on this report what is the lowest, what is the entry grade level point that they're going to be starting their work. And it could be all over, right? They're in algebra and expressions, they're going to start with some 8th grade skills. In measurement, they're going to start with some 6th grade skills. So we are able to see with the sorting feature the difference between our class. We are able to sort to see which student is possibly still working on some 3rd grade skills, and then who is only working on 10th and above. So again, the LPEG, the lowest path entry grade point, the point of entry in their individualized learning paths, which we will take a look at. If I wanted to quickly look at an individual student's report, anything that here is hyperlinked, I can click on. So let's take a look at Carrie. I have a parent conference coming up. I need to quickly access her data. We can see that she has grown in math. She really grew in reading from Test 1 to Test 2, as well as in language arts. So this is the big picture of the growth of the scale score and her national percentile ranking. If I want to dig deep into each subject area, I can just click on her report. We ended at Test 2. We haven't quite yet done Test 3. And here the first section is going to tell me the national percentile rank. She is at the 50th percentile with an 1146 scale score. And remember, the scale scores and the national percentiles are posted in some of the documentation that we have for your review. So she's at the 50th percentile. And remember when we talked about that academic administration experience? This is the experience that this particular student had in the math assessment. We start off a few grade levels below to give them that confidence. And then we progress through questions. And as this line gets shorter and shorter, the computer knows where to create that learning path. We can hover over each one of these items and we can see the grade level of the question, if it was correct, how much time was spent, and what was the domain. So data tells a story, but this helps even dig into that story just a little bit more. This bar that you see is called a confidence interval. A confidence interval, they start out long, they end short. I like to think of the confidence interval as the adaptive diagnostic feeling confident itself in creating that perfect individualized learning path for that student. So the longer the bar, okay, we're starting off that confidence. Then as we go through the questions, through the grade levels, through the domains, that confidence interval shrinks, which means the computer program feels confident in creating that individualized learning path. They had 43 questions in 29 minutes. I can even go a little bit further and I can explore each domain, the skills that were tested, and the points that were achieved. All of this information creates the individualized learning paths. So as a teacher, this is my class report. I can schedule new testing windows. I can look at Lexile levels, quantile levels, and again, I can sort between classes. When we want to think about what does that learning path, you keep hearing learning path, what does that look like? This is our individualized learning paths, and this view is what we call a knowledge map. A teacher can see all the different spaces and skills that their class needs assistance with. This is what we call differentiation, what I call differentiation at its best. The teacher is able to see who needs what skill in what domain in math, in reading, and language arts. The student progresses through their learning path one skill at a time. They work on one skill, they achieve and mastery and get that trophy. They work on another skill and they will be doing a lesson and a progress check. So they want to progress through their learning paths. So as a teacher, when I look at my data on my assessment data that we just looked at previously, that was one moment in time. Very important data, but one moment in time. And now we've gone a week, we've gone 2 weeks, we've gone 2 months before our next administration. And the work that has been going on in ExactPath is amazing. So with the changes that happen on a daily basis, if I am a teacher and I would like to create some group assignments or just understand visually, where are my students in numbers and operations, and let's say comparing 2 digits. I am going to auto group my students, and they're going to be placed in who assessed above, who's currently practicing, who has not taken, and who's placed above. With this information, this is going to change. These groups are going to change every few days based upon who has completed that skill. So this grouping feature is really nice for maybe your tier 2, tier 3 students, that you can create an assignment for those groups for these 2 students. And then maybe you want to create a different assignment for this particular group of students. So you're easily able to create an assignment based upon the group and the progress of how they're doing in that individualized learning path, but yet, are they on the same skill? Do they need the same priority skill assignment? So the grouping feature, you're able to create individualized or group assignments for how your students are grouped, where they're progressing through their learning path. On the assignment tab, teachers can assign individual or group priority skill assignments. So if I want to look at my 9th graders and I want to focus on reading, language and vocabulary, context clues, I am going to look at the content style of 6 through 12 because this is my 9th grade class. I want to make sure that what they are viewing is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. I could preview the lesson in the practice if I wanted to. I can also project it if I'm doing a class assignment. And I would easily click here. Next, select my end date of when I want it to be due. Remember to go to my correct class. And then I'm going to select the students that I want to have that particular assignment. And I click assign. So assignments are for individual or a few students if you want to push out an assignment. Groups are when we have our grouping feature to see where are my students on that learning path. Time that has passed after the diagnostic. Things have changed. Where can I group my students and make assignments? Possibly more for tier 2, tier 3, and the assignment feature could be more for tier 1, tier 2. Could be very well intermixed with all tiers, whether it's groups or assignments. The assignments tab also kind of works as a grade book Teachers can see what have we assigned, who has turned it in, and what were their scores. So this is ExactPath. As a teacher sees it, they have access to individualized learning paths. They have access to creating group assignments, individual, as well as all of their data from each diagnostic. I now want to take you into what it looks like for a student. This is a student's ExactPath in secondary education. And if I go into Carrie's, I can see that she has a reading learning path, a language arts learning path, and a math learning path. I also see that she has been assigned a priority skill assignment by her teacher. So when I can do that, I am able to see, again, the learning paths that they can work on individually, and then the skill assignments that the teacher has individually pushed out for that student. What you see here are two different ways of learning, making it happen, letting it happen. How does ExactPath kind of work? So the language arts or the learning path, right, whether it's reading, language arts, or math, that is what we call letting it happen. The student goes in and works individually, working through their path and obtaining those skills, one skill at a time, earning that trophy. They can also keep track of their trophies earned. And then there'll also be the individual assignments. This is what we call making it happen. The teacher has made it happen to push out a specific skill to a specific student. When the student logs in, they'll know exactly what they need to do. First would be their priority skill assignment based upon the due date. And then when they're finished, they can go on to their reading, language arts, or math learning paths. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like. So we have the lesson and the progress check. And when the student is starting to work in their course, it has the look and feel that's appropriate for a student in secondary education. They can click through the content. And then we want to make sure that students in secondary education have solid study skills. This is really important as the reading support and age-appropriate curriculum is provided to them, but also how are we supporting them with study skills? Over on the left-hand side, every single slide that the student works through will have the same set of resources. We have a table of contents, note-taking for retention. We have a folder of resources, which can be guided notes, a glossary, vocabulary. We have a dictionary to look up words. We also have easy access for words that are highlighted in the text. We have the listen while reading feature. Maybe the student just needs to absorb and listen. We have the translation tool to add meaning, and we have about 17 languages that the students can translate the content into the language of their choice and translate. And we have the highlighter feature to help with focus. So all of those study tools are available to them as they work through their course. Once teachers have straightforward and immediate data, they are able to identify a number of areas: growth, progress, usage, demographics, lexiles, norms, and we can use diagnostic data to help with MTSS or RTI. We can check on IEP goals, and we can conference with our students to set their own individual goals. So in summary, ExactPath has both the assessment and curriculum for grades K through 12. We are very proud to offer this combination specifically in 9 through 12, as that is not typical among our competitors. All grade levels have access to both the diagnostic and the curriculum. We have the diagnostic. It targets instruction with individualized learning paths. While students are working on those individualized learning paths, there are automatic progress checks. The teacher can also create small groups or individual assignments by pushing out, right, that making it happen. This is letting it happen, making it happen. Our work is evidence-based. Various third-party studies have been commissioned to determine the efficacy of ExactPath. Our Tier 2 ESSA evidence confirms that students who complete 8 skills show significant learning gains. Edmentum's own diagnostic has been proven to be valid and reliable and allows you to compare results over time. Our learning paths are designed from an objective research base on how to effectively engage students. Our continuous services ecosystem provides support for educators on their schedule, whether they are working in the product and need immediate help via the support site or on-demand webinars. Maybe teachers would like to collaborate with one of our experts online or face-to-face. Possibly they'd like to connect with colleagues casually just to ask questions or brainstorm via our educator network. Our commitment to services and support distinguishes us in the market, and we have also won a CODiE Award for Top Pandemic Response Partner. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about ExactPath and its adaptive diagnostic to help accelerate growth. We will have 2 more webinars coming up. Next week, join us to learn more about acceleration and remediation in a Bell schedule. And then on the 11th of November, we will release Using Growth Data to Drive Classroom Instruction. Thank you so much for joining us today.